What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate. Today, we got another fantastic top 25 matchup for you in week 3 of the 2025 college football season. This one from South Bend, Indiana, and it features the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who beat Texas A&M in Kyle Field last year, while the Aggies are looking to bounce back and get a massive win to dive into deeper SEC and college football playoff championship races and conversations. It's a battle of two really solid sides here, and does Notre Dame maintain the edge in the series, or is Texas A&M going to get that revenge and drop the Irish to 0-2. My name is Nate Both, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. I'm a sports media graduate with a massive passion for everything that happens in the world of sports, but especially the world of college football. And if you want to follow in my journey to talk about college football, or my journey to reach as high as I can as a professional in the industry of sports media, a couple things you can do on this channel. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. You want to be locked in, college football nerds? We talk a lot of ball here on the channel, do a lot of predictions, things of that nature. And if you want to follow me in that journey that I mentioned earlier, follow me on social media, TailgateNate29, Twitter, Instagram, wherever else you like to peruse through the socials. And I really appreciate all the ways that you guys support and interact with me and this channel. But all that said and done, 7:30 game, NBC and Peacock. All lines and odds are as of recording this video. Notre Dame is getting nearly a touchdown at home. Again, that probably, if anything, is going to end up sliding down, maybe towards Texas A&M a little bit more. It could slide to Notre Dame depending on the health of Marcel Reed, but we will get there later. Notre Dame has only played in one game so far this year. It was that 27-24 loss against the Miami Hurricanes a couple of weeks ago. This is a Notre Dame team that, when you look last year at this matchup with Texas A&M in Kyle Field, 23-13 win for the Irish, it was the lines of scrimmage, the offensive front, the defensive front. It was dynamic in every single way in the matchup last year. Both of those position groupings were. This year so far, they have not looked that impressive. I think both the offensive and defensive fronts can still be good units for the Irish this year, but man, did the offensive line struggle. Miami was able to garner up 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, which is not something you saw really anybody do against this Notre Dame Notre Dame offensive front last year. And then this Notre Dame defensive front, it was getting pushed around and bullied, and it really did not have a big impact on this game at all. I know Miami only ran for 3.1 yards per carry, but they were able to grind it out there. Just 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss for this Notre Dame defensive front. So that's something Texas A&M can take advantage of, but we'll talk about that later. What you can take away from that Miami game as a positive is CJ Carr. Well, he proved his worth when he was called upon in the late game scenarios. He almost pulled the game out of the fire. CJ Carr is going to be a good to great, really good quarterback. I'll just leave it at that. He's going to be a really good quarterback for Notre Dame this season. But these running backs, man, I don't know what happened last week, but there were not a lot of touches for these, or I should say 2 weeks ago. Keep thinking about last week, but Notre Dame had a bye week last week. You've got to give these running backs more touches. Jadarian Price did make the most of his 6 carries, went for 45 yards. That's 7.5 yards per carry. But Jeremiah Love, man, 10 carries for only 33 yards. So that also speaks to what the Miami defensive front is capable of. But he only got 14 touches in the game, period. That was it. You have to let the playmakers make plays. And against this Texas A&M defense that has led up some points to UTSA and to Utah State, you got to let the workhorses go to work, right? You have to let the engine drive the car. And Jeremiah Love is the engine to this offense. He has got to get more touches in this game. It is nearly inexcusable with how little he had the football in his hands in that game against Miami. Again, not taking anything away from CJ Carr. He looked pretty good. Took a minute to come on, but looked really good down the stretch, and he'll be a good quarterback this year. He's going to make some good throws. You have to let Jeremiah Love make plays for this offense, because when he's not, this is a Notre Dame team that is not as effective as they can be. Offensively for Texas A&M, Marcel Reed. He's the big question coming into this one. A little bit banged up against the Aggies last week, the Utah State Aggies, that is. So if Marcel Reed is healthy, that's the expectation. He's fully healthy, ready to go. And if he looks great, well, then he's got to end up being dynamic. Probably both with his legs and with his arm. He's going to have to make some throws here against a secondary that loves to play man-to-man coverage. Went away from that at points in that game against Miami. So I think pressing the receivers going to be a big issue, or not big issue, but a big topic of discussion for Notre Dame this week, as they really did start to get torn up at points with what Carson Beck and this young Miami wide receiver room was doing from the offensive standpoint. But Marcel Reed got to be dynamic and also utilize those legs. We know he's got it. He's got a very talented running back in Le'Veon Moss as well. Ground game can do a lot. Again, Miami did not rip off chunk yardage play after chunk yardage play, but it was able to grind out nearly 120 yards against this Notre Dame defensive front, which is not something that you said too often last year. So being able to grind that out and throwing something in that Notre Dame didn't see in their last game, the quarterback run with Marcel Reed extending plays out of the pocket, that's going to play into the hands of Texas A&M. You know what else will play into the hands? You got to take advantage of these lines being shaky for the Irish really as long as you can. Now, Notre Dame had an extra week of practice to be able to work on things and prepare for everything that this Texas A&M team was going to throw at Notre Dame. Cool, that's all great. These Notre Dame fronts did not impress me. They impressed me in moments, but overall, not really seeing anything super special from an overall perspective. So if Texas A&M can get the pass rush going, be able to manhandle the Notre Dame defensive front just like Miami was able to do, boy, is that going to be huge for them. You're going to open up tons of space for Le'Veon Moss to be able to run. You're going to get these wide receiver talents on the outside open, and I think Marcel Reed, Texas A&M, they're going to trust their guys in one-on-one coverage. Now, so is Notre Dame, and they got some of the best man-to-man corners in the sport right now. But this is absolutely a Texas A&M team that's got to mix things up offensively. But if they can take advantage of the Notre Dame defensive front, possibly presenting more issues in this game, or the same issues that didn't get cleaned up over the 2 weeks of practice that they had to prepare for this game, Texas A&M, that's a huge leg up for them, man. That's a big leg up. But again, where did they lose this game last year? Time of possession. It has got to be better for Texas A&M in this game. And while the number is slipping my mind off the top of my head, I can tell you one thing's for sure. Notre Dame held the ball for a lot longer in that contest than what the Aggies would have liked. And obviously way long enough for Texas A&M to not really have a say there towards the end of that game, as Notre Dame was able to go ice the thing late in that contest. But this game really does feel like a must-win for both sides. And here's why. Texas A&M has got some very tricky games coming up on the schedule. Next week, granted it's a home game, but you have Auburn at home against Mississippi State, home against Florida, on the road against Arkansas. Well, okay, that's really not too bad. But then in your final 5 games, mixing in the Samford one, you have on the road at LSU, on the road at Missouri, at home against South Carolina, and you finish the season on the road at Texas. This is the game that Texas A&M, look, you're probably going to drop the one to LSU. You're probably going to drop the one to Texas. You might even drop a third one in there somewhere. Aggie fans may be looking at this game and saying, and looking forward at their schedule and saying, guys, we cannot afford to lose here. We just can't afford to lose, because you lose this one, then you lose 2 more, maybe even 3 more, with how tricky some of the games on the schedule can be. You're out of SEC championship contention, most likely. You're definitely out of college football playoff contention. So this is a big one for Texas A&M. But it's also, or I should say, it's a big one for Texas A&M, but it's also a massive one for Notre Dame, because you take a look at their schedule moving forward. Miami was a great chance for them to get a big-time marquee win, especially on the road. Yes, this one would be a pretty darn good win, but then if A&M goes and finishes the year 8-4, 9-3 again, definitely is not going to look as good as, say, a win on the road in Hard Rock Stadium could have looked. And there really are not that many opportunities to pad up your resume here for Notre Dame. So they lose this one and fall to 0-2. They got to hope for some chaos around them, because as of this current moment, you do not play another ranked team on the schedule for the rest of the year. So this is the game that Notre Dame also really needs. So I think you're going to get that early sense of desperation. I think this is going to be a playoff level game here. You're going to feel the intensity. The environment is going to be rocking in South Bend. And I think that helps out Notre Dame. And I think the lines are going to be better. I just can't imagine the offensive line struggling as much as it did last week, especially with how much talent they have. Same thing with this defensive front. I don't think they struggle as much last week. And again, I trust this Notre Dame coaching staff and Marcus Freeman to put the ball in the hands of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love more. And CJ Carr, the moments that he's going to get in this game to air the thing out, I think he's going to find some success as this A&M defense, again, has led up some points against two group of five sides, albeit UTSA, Utah State. They look pretty solid already throughout the early part of the year. But I'm going with the Irish to bounce back and get their first win, which means Texas A&M gets their first loss. 28-21 Notre Dame. I think you're going to see a little bit of offense here, and Notre Dame is still going to present some struggles, as will Texas A&M, but I like the pieces on this offense a little bit more, and I like the matchup more for Notre Dame, as well as getting this one on home field. Desperation going to be big for both of these sides, but I think the Irish, their perseverance and motivation will win out. So 28-21. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And remember to play hard but tailgate harder. One more top 25 game coming out later today. Goodbye.